Welcome to the deep dive. Ever look at a pond and see those plants just sort of floating on top?
Just chilling there on the surface.
Exactly. So today we're diving into that world, specifically the free-floating aquatic plants.
The ones that aren't stuck in the mud.
Right. We've got a bunch of great info here from Texas A&M AgriLife Extension's aquaplant resource. Really useful stuff.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource.
And our mission today really is to get a handle on these botanical boppers, figure out what makes them tick, where they live.
How they fit into the ecosystem.
And this is important. Which ones can become, well, a real problem, a headache.
Definitely. Let's get into it.
So what's fascinating, like you said, is how they manage to live without being anchored down.
Yeah, it's a whole different strategy, isn't it? They're not like rooted plants underwater or the ones cattails that stick way out. These floaters, they're doing their own thing.
And our sources are pretty clear on that definition. A true floating plant isn't attached to the bottom. It might have roots hanging down.
Sure, dangly in the water column.
But the main plant body is just floating freely. Not like, say, a lily pad that's rooted.
Right. Lilies are what the sources call emergent plants. Different category for today. We're focused purely on the free floaters.
And that lifestyle, being unanchored, it dictates so much, right? How they get nutrients, how they spread.
At everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fundamental to what they are.
Okay, so aquaplant covers quite a few of these. Where should we start? Maybe with the native ones, the ones that are supposed to be here.
That makes sense. Yeah. Gives us a baseline. What a healthy system looks like before we talk about the troublemakers.
Good plan. Let's kick off with American featherfoil. Hatonia inflata. Sounds delicate.
It does. And the description fits mostly. It's an annual herb.
And it has these upright, hollow flower stems, almost leafless apparently. They only get about 6 inches tall.
Right. And the leaves are all clustered down at the base, oblong shape, but then they're split into these really, really fine thread-like bits.
Filiform divisions is the term they use, like tiny hairs.
Yeah, exactly. Gives a lot of surface area. Probably good for tiny creatures to hang on to.
And it has small white flowers kind of spaced out along that stem. An interrupted raceme, they call it.
And it likes specific conditions. Shallow, quiet, clear water with lots of organic matter. Often found with pennyworts and bladderworts, apparently.
It says you something about its niche, doesn't it?
It does.
And ecologically? Well, like most aquatic plants, the underwater parts are habitat for invertebrates.
Those little bugs and worms that fish and ducks love.
Exactly. And when the featherfoil dies back, it becomes detritus.
Which is basically, decaying plant stuff. Food for other bottom feeders. It keeps the nutrients cycling.
It's all part of that underwater food web. Okay, next up, bladderwort. Utricularia. Now that name is intriguing.
Oh, it is. Because bladderwort is, it's carnivorous.
Get out! A carnivorous plant floating in a pond.
Yep. Its underwater leaves have these tiny little oval bladders. And these bladders have trigger hairs.
Okay, trigger hairs. What do?
So if a tiny water flea or some other small creature swims by and bumps those hairs, whoosh, a little valve opens, water rushes in, and it sucks the creature right into the bladder.
No way. And then it digests it.
Digests it. It's a plant that eats animals, probably helps it get nutrients, especially nitrogen, in water where it might be scarce.
Wow, that's definitely not typical plant behavior. The sources also say the leaves are small, linear, in whorls. Stems are slender.
Delicate, yeah. And the flowers are pretty yellow or rose purple, fragrant sometimes, with a distinct shape. Sometimes even inflated, like little floats themselves.
And habitat-wise, similar to featherfoil.
Pretty much. Quiet, shallow, often acidic waters. It can form really dense mats sometimes.
Ecologically, its habitat is detritus. But the source notes something interesting. No known direct food value to wildlife.
Which makes sense, right? If it's busy eating the wildlife's food, maybe they don't eat it back as much.
Huh. Good point. Still impacts the food web, just differently, by taking out those tiny invertebrates.
Exactly. Okay, moving on.
Let's. Mosquito fern. Azolla. Is it actually a fern?
It is a fern, yeah. But it doesn't look like a typical fern you'd see on land. It looks more like a liverwort, actually.
Okay. Small leaves, opposite each other. 2 lobes.
Right. A top lobe that floats and a bottom one that's underwater. And the key thing is the color change. It's usually green.
But it can turn reddish or brown when it's stressed, like too hot, too cold, not enough nutrients.
Precisely. You'll find it in still water, swamps, ponds, lakes, slow streams, sometimes just resting on mud.
Provides habitat, becomes detritus. We're seeing a pattern.
We are. But here's a little twist from the source material.
Oh,
Even though it's native, Azolla can sometimes become an aggressive invader.
really? A native plant becoming invasive. How does that happen?
Well, sometimes conditions change. Maybe there's extra nutrient runoff, from farms or lawns, or maybe the water flow changes. Something gives it an advantage and it just takes off, out-competing other native plants.
So even native species can get out of balance sometimes. Interesting.
It happens.
All right, let's talk duckweeds. Starting with the big one. Giant duckweed. Spirodella polyrhiza. Sounds impressive, but it's still tiny, right? Like less than half an inch.
Yeah, giant is relative here. It's definitely bigger than common duckweed, but still very small. Flat, oval leaves.
Dark green on top, reddish purple underneath, with a little dot.
That's the one. And look for the roots. It has a bundle, maybe 4 to 12 roots, hanging down together. Distinct root cap, too.
And it makes little buds that sink to the bottom for winter.
Right, overwintering buds. A survival strategy. You find it where you find other duckweeds, ponds, lakes, slow streams.
And here we go again, native, but can be an aggressive invader, can cause oxygen depletion, block sunlight if it gets too thick.
But on the flip side, when it's in balance, it's food for ducks. Good habitat for invertebrates.
So it's about balance. These natives have roles, but unchecked growth is the problem.
That's the key theme, really. Natural controls usually keep them in check.
Okay, let's talk regular duckweed then. Lemna species. This is what most people picture, I think.
Probably. Those tiny little green dots, often clumped together, little clusters of leaves, maybe 2 to 5 or more.
Round or egg-shaped, slightly curved, tiny flowers, tiny fruit, even tiny root nerves, the source mentions.
Yep. And it's everywhere. Ponds, lakes, streams, super common.
But potential to be aggressive, form dense mats, deplete oxygen.
Same potential issue as giant duckweed, yes.
Yeah.
But also same benefits when it's not overgrown habitat and detritus.
The source mentions a few common types too, Lemna valdivinia, minuta, minor. So there's variety even in these little specks.
Absolutely. More complex than it looks.
No, even smaller. Watermeal. Wolfia. This sounds almost like dust.
It's incredibly tiny. Barely visible, the source says. Like a pinhead. Spherical or oval.
And it's rootless, just floats.
Rootless. And it often forms this thin green scum on the surface, sometimes huge masses of it, making the water look like it's covered in green paint.
Wow. Found in lakes, ponds, marshes, often with duckweed.
Right. And surprise, surprise, it can be a nuisance. Too much of it means low oxygen, blocked sunlight.
Not really food for much, but ducks might eat it by accident and spread it.
Plausible, yeah.
Yeah.
It just shows the range, doesn't it? From featherfoil down to this almost microscopic plant.
It really does. Okay, another tiny one. Florida mud midget. Wolfiella gladiata. Mud midget.
Yeah, the name's a bit odd for a floater. Maybe refers to shallow spots or just its tiny size.
Long, narrow leaves, connected in star shapes.
That's right. Still really small, only a fraction of an inch long. And the flowers are apparently super hard to spot.
Found just below the surface in lakes, ponds, streams.
Yeah.
And potential to be aggressive.
Yep, another one with that potential downside, but also provides habitat and detritus on the plus side.
Seeing that pattern again. Beneficial, but can overgrow if conditions are right.
Exactly.
Last native on our list, floating crystalwort. Richia fluitans. This one has a connection to aquariums.
It does. It's really popular in the aquarium hobby, which is how it got spread around quite a bit.
Physically, it's different, though. No clear leaves and stems.
Right, it's more like forking ribbons of green tissue. Kind of thick, but narrow. And no real roots, just thin anchor things.
And it can grow underwater or float in clumps.
Both. Often found in slow streams and ponds. And yeah, even though it got spread by humans, it still functions ecologically,
Right.
providing habitat and breaking down into detritus.
Still, that aquarium connection is interesting. Shows how easily things can get moved around, even native-ish things.
It really does. Even seemingly harmless hobbies can have impacts.
Okay, so that's a good tour of the natives. Fascinating range, some unexpected traits like the bladderwort.
Absolutely.
But now, let's shift gears. Let's talk about the ones our sources specifically call out as non-native and invasive. The ones we really need to watch out for.
Right. This is where things get serious, ecologically speaking. These non-natives often lack the natural checks and balances, predators, diseases that they'd have in their home range.
Which lets them just take over.
Pretty much. They can outcompete native plants, mess up the food web, just completely change the environment. That unchecked growth is the core issue. It throws off the whole oxygen and light situation that aquatic life depends on.
Okay, first on this list, common Salvinia, Salvinia minima, Sounds harmless. Common, minima.
Don't let the name fool you. The sources are very clear. This one is aggressively invasive.
Small leaves in pairs, stemless, soft body.
Yep. And it reproduces like crazy. Spores, yes, but mostly fragmentation. Just a tiny piece breaks off.
And starts a whole new plant.
Exactly, which is why it spreads so fast.
And the big worry is these super dense mats it forms, right? Covering the whole surface.
Totally, which leads to severe oxygen depletion, fish kills, harm to everything living in the water.
And the sources are blunt. Do not grow it. It's illegal to possess or transport in Texas. Report it if you see it.
Absolutely. That legal warning tells you how serious the threat is. It's a fern, by the way, no flowers. Grows about an inch thick on the water.
That's a strong message. Those laws aren't just suggestions.
They reflect potential for major ecological harm.
Next, dotted duckweed. Lendulcia punctata. Sounds like regular duckweed, but dotted.
That's the key visual difference. Usually 2 leaves per plant, kind of shoe-shaped, and they have this dotted texture. Plus, usually 2 to 5 roots per leaf.
Found in rivers, ponds, lakes.
Pretty standard freshwater habitats. But again, it's an aggressive invader. And a tricky one because it often mixes in with native duckweeds.
Making it harder to spot early.
Exactly. And same problem. Dense mats block sunlight, oxygen drops, fish can die.
And same warning. Non-native, invasive, illegal to possess or move in Texas. Report sightings.
Identical warning. These repeated flags really should make people think twice about moving plants between water bodies.
Definitely. Okay, now for one that sounds even worse, giant Salvinia. Salvinia molesta.
Molesta means troublesome, right?
It certainly does, and it lives up to the name. Physically similar to common Salvinia paired leaves, stemless branching roots, native to South America.
But the problem is the growth rate. Oh yeah, it reproduces primarily by fragmentation. And under good conditions, warm water, lots of nutrients, it can literally double its coverage area in, get this, 4 to 10 days.
4 to 10 days, that's unbelievable.
It's incredibly fast. That's why it's such a massive problem in Texas and across the South.
Yeah.
Forms incredibly thick mats.
So same devastating effects. Oxygen depletion, fish kills, blocks everything out.
Exactly. And the warning is just as strong, maybe even more emphasized because it's such a well-known problem species. Do not grow, possess, or transport it. Report it immediately.
Even though it has spore structures, it mostly just breaks apart.
Primarily fragmentation. That efficiency is what makes it so hard to control. Just one tiny fragment escaping on a boat trailer or something.
It could start a whole new infestation somewhere else. Scary.
Very.
Now, 2 water hyacinths are listed. Rooted water hyacinth, Pontederia azurea, and just water hyacinth, Pontederia craspis. They sound almost identical.
They're very similar, both from South America, both now found in the southern U.S., both have those different leaf types, long and thin underwater, broad and spongy, often floating on top.
With those showy purple-blue flower spikes.
Right. Very distinctive flowers. And both are free-floating. The rooted name for azurea might be a bit confusing in this context, but both are series of problems.
Very aggressive invaders form thick mats, oxygen depletion, fish kills.
Check, check, and check. For both species, they can completely choke waterways.
And the legal warning applies to both equally. Illegal to possess, transport in Texas, report sightings.
Yes, the warning covers both. They're notorious invasive plants here. Those thick mats don't just harm the ecosystem, they block boats, clog intake pipes. Real economic impacts, too.
Right. It's not just about the fish. Okay, last one on the invasive list. Water lettuce, Pistia stratiotes.
Descriptive name. It looks a bit like floating heads of lettuce, doesn't it?
Yeah, clusters of wedge-shaped leaves, kind of velvety, pointing up, can get pretty big, like 10 inches long.
That's the one. With long, feathery roots hanging down underneath. Forms dense mats, just like the others. Found in streams, lakes, ponds.
And let me guess. Very aggressive invader. Oxygen depletion. Fish kills potential.
You got it. Same story. It's not native to the U.S. at all.
And the same warning, don't grow it, don't move it, report it.
Exactly the same. So yeah, that pattern with the non-natives is really clear, isn't it? Rapid growth, dense mats, severe ecological consequences.
Absolutely, because they don't have those natural checks and balances here.
Precisely. They just run rampant and crowd out everything else, creating these unhealthy monocultures.
It really drives home how careful we need to be about introducing anything non-native. Okay, so we've looked at individual plants, natives, and invasives. Let's zoom out again. Our sources also talk about the general ecological roles these floaters play when they're, in balance.
Right. And a huge one we've touched on is habitat. Those submerged parts, roots, leaves, so they create this complex underwater jungle gym.
For all the tiny critters. Insect larvae, little crustaceans, worms.
Exactly. Micro and macro invertebrates. And they are super important food for fish, amphibians, birds.
In the base of the food web, really.
And then there's the detritus part again. When the plants die, they break down.
And become food for other organisms, recycling those nutrients back into the system. It's a vital process.
But there are nuances, like we said. Bladderwort eating the critters.
Right. Not exactly a direct food source itself in the same way duckweed might be for a duck.
And the biggest caveat, which we've hammered home with the invasives, is density. Too much of any floating plant, even a native one, that gets out of control.
Can flip the switch from beneficial to harmful. Those dense mats causing oxygen loss and blocking sunlight that overrides any habitat benefit they might have provided at lower densities.
Which really gets to the heart of the invasive problem. It's not just about where they're from, it's about that unchecked disruptive growth. Exactly. That dense surface cover is the killer, literally. Lack of oxygen kills fish and other animals. Lack of sunlight kills submerged plants and algae, which messes up the whole food web and reduces oxygen production even further. It's a downward spiral.
And like we saw with the Texas examples, the potential for damage is why there are actual laws against moving some of these plants around.
Right. Those regulations reflect the real significant ecological and economic costs these plants can inflict.
So wrapping up our deep dive here, it's really a tale of two sides for these floating plants, isn't it?
It really is. You've got the fascinating native species, each with its own unique adaptations and role to play in a healthy ecosystem.
Providing food, shelter, contributing to the nutrient cycle.
But then you have the dark side, the non-native invasives that can just explode, causing massive harm, disrupting that natural balance we keep talking about.
So understanding these plants, knowing the difference between a beneficial native like featherfoil or maybe some balanced duckweed and a serious threat like giant salvinia or water hyacinth, that's really crucial.
It's fundamental for anyone who cares about healthy ponds, lakes, rivers. Just being able to recognize them is the first step towards managing them responsibly.
So here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Consider that really intricate, often invisible balance within these water ecosystems.
Yeah, think about how introducing just one wrong plant can send ripples through that whole system, affecting everything else.
Maybe next time you're near a local pond or lake, take a closer look at what's floating on the surface. What do you see? Are they natives? Could any be invasives?
It's a whole hidden world there. Fascinating and sometimes, yeah, pretty problematic, just waiting to be understood right there on the water